Start a little early, so I feel like when we start a little early, we actually get things started on time. So I'm just gonna wait while everybody trickles in. Check my email real quick, make sure nothing pressing is going on. Good evening, sir. I'll just let you know ahead of time, the upload speed between what I'm actually interacting with and what's actually you're seeing is quite long tonight. I don't know why. My internet seems to be working pretty well, but apparently the delay in the stream is a little bit elongated more than normal. So I'm just going to wait for a couple more minutes, give people a chance to log in. Don't have a lot on the list today. I don't actually have anything to show. My second camera is acting a little bit wonky. I think I need to change out some cables to it. So it's just me today. Go over some stuff and then wrap up a little early, potentially, depending on how many people jump on and what we get into. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. How's everybody's Friday going? You all looking forward to the weekend? Got NBA playoff basketball if you are a basketball person. And Major League Baseball is back. Sports fans out there, are you guys psyched? NFL draft's right around the corner. We can talk about the weather if you guys don't want to talk about sports, but just figured I'd fill some dead air with something. All right, go sports ball. See, there you go. I like sports enough to stay in the know. I'm not well, that's not true. I enjoy sports. I enjoy talking about sports. I don't watch a lot of sports. I listen to a lot of sports on the radio and listen to sports talk radio on the way to and from work. But it's one of those things. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into it. I know there's not very many people signed on. It's possible there might not be very many people. I moved the stream up from 4 p.m. to 3 p.m., so might be a little bit Might be a little bit lonely here for me and for all y'all who like to interact with one another. But we're going to get started. I'm going to jump right into just kind of the list of stuff. Excuse me. Today's like priorities and stuff I'm going to be going over. We'll just actually I was going to give a little bit of a like rundown, but instead of doing the rundown, I need to figure out how to do the scroller or like that ESPN style, like it ticks off like PTI type thing. But for now, we're just going to get right into it. So if you guys have been waiting for, let me change this screen real quick. If you've been waiting for, that was weird. If you've been waiting for titanium Retrakts, they're basically available now if you're a club member. The first very small like pre-production run, the first 30-ish or so that came off the machines, we tumbled and put on the site yesterday. Exclusive early access for the Pen Club. Same tumbled finish as the EDK and the bolts, but those will move from early access for the Pen Club to the standard website tomorrow. I don't know what time it's scheduled to go. I haven't looked at it. I set it up and now I forgot what time it's scheduled to move over. Probably between 10 and noon. That's usually when I have that ready to go. So somewhere around that time frame. They're matching finishes, the tumble titanium finish, standard stainless steel clip and click mechanism. We got the reactor screws on there, the torque screws. You'll get to select your refill that you want in there, that you want to choose in there, and they're priced at $110, so the same price as the bolts were. I don't know how big the batch is. The production run of those is going to be. I know that we did a double batch of the bolts, and those sold out in like 2 months, and then we have done 2 batches of EDKs. And those sold out. Well, the first batch sold out relatively quickly, and then we added the second batch like a month and a half later. So, and those are sold out now. So, if you've been looking for that, you might want to jump on it as quickly as possible, since we don't know how long they're going to last, but I know a lot of people have reached out to us concerning the titanium Retrakts. Just, when are you guys gonna have it? It's just the standard ones, no rings, no flutes, just the standard regular run-of-the-mill titanium Retrakts with a tumbled finish. That's kind of how we're gonna release the titanium products from here on out. The first release will be just the standard version with a heavy tumbled titanium finish. So that's kind of going to be the main production version of our titanium pins, whatever pins we have. That being said, we are going to be releasing some anodized titanium bolts and EDKs, hopefully, fingers crossed, this coming week. They'll go to the Pen Club first, and then if they don't sell out to the Pen Club, then at the end of the week we'll move them to the main site. So probably like next Friday they might move to the end of or Saturday they'll move. From the Pen Club to the main site. We're gonna do standardized this first run, that kind of greenish tint on that first run. I don't have one here. I have a blue one here was a messed up one. It's going to be kind of this. I don't even know if you can see. Will it focus? Probably not. Of course it won't focus. Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if the autofocus probably isn't on. So it's going to be a green color. The green anodized. When we had some previously, we've taken some of the pen shows. That seems to be the most popular color of the anodized titanium. And now that we have the process, now that we're getting the process more consistent, we're going to try to do them in like a 20 to 25 piece run maximum of that color. And then we'll release that 20 to 25 release batch. Then we'll, we might pick another color and then do the same thing in there. It also depends on the amount of pens that we have. The pens that we're using now, the EDKs, are some that we had to do rework on. So we had a tool break, and so they didn't get the clip holes drilled in them because that tool broke. So it ran it was automated, so it ran like 100 uppers that didn't have clip holes or the fastener holes for the clip in them. So we just set them off to the side, and now we're going back and we've added those in a second operation. And now since we have those, we're just going to go ahead and release them in small batches with the lowers that we get off. So we should have, like I said, small batch somewhere around 20 to 25 in there, depending on how many good ones we get off this first run of both the bolts and the EDKs. And those, like I said, those will go to the pen club first this coming week. And I think the EDKs are smooth upper EDKs. That they don't have the knurling on them, but the bolts are just standard bolts, and everything else is going to be standard on those as well. So if you're interested in something like that, we'll have those, like I said, next week. For those of you who are looking for speedsters, if you don't know what a speedster is, this behind me is a speedster. That is one of the original versions. The version we are doing now is a smaller version. So this, if you can see, is this big. It's very, very large, very heavy. It weighs more than a cube, this aluminum one does, but we're not doing this size any longer. I don't have one here, but it's about half this big, maybe a little bit, maybe even under half. So it's considerably smaller, but it's more appropriate for something like that. Like this is just too big and too costly. We can't make those cost effectively with that version, that large. People didn't understand why they were priced as high as they were, and they got them. They're like, oh my gosh, these are so big, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So the ones we're making are I think they're 3 inches, 2 3/4 inches long, 3 inches long. Quite a bit more manageable in terms of like if you have like a small desk, something to put on your desk, or a small space on a shelf. We're going to be doing these completely different than we've done in the past. In the past, we just did a whole bunch of them, manufactured a bunch of them, sent them out for like 2 or 3 different colors of anodize, and just put them all up on the website. And they lasted a long time when we had them, but then when we were out of stock, it was just like, we didn't have the time, we didn't have the resources, the machine time to do more of them. So the idea was to make a smaller version that's a lot easier to manufacture, number one, so we can keep the cost down. And then that would also allow us to basically do in between like production runs of other products, some of the job shop work, we could like, before we set up for a new thing, we could throw in, hey, let's do a small run of the speedsters real quick in a new color. With that, we're going to be batch numbering every single one that we make. So they're going to be laser marked with the batch number in some format, kind of hidden a little bit. Not really to make them collector's items, more to make them so it's like, hey, I got this one during whatever, when are you going to do this one again, type of thing. Because we're going to do them in small numbers, and we're going to release probably just one, maybe two colors at a time. So this first batch is going to be red, and we only have, I don't even have a full like bin of them. So there's 20, between 20 and 30 that we're doing right now. And then, it might be another 2 months or 2.5 months before that machine frees up to where we can throw in some more and do a second batch, and maybe those will be black. The wheels are all going to be anodized black for the time being. So, once those are done, they'll go out for anodized black. I don't have a time frame on when they're going to be released. But hopefully soon. Like the bodies are coming, it should be coming back in the next 7 to 14 days. They're already out of the anodizer. And then once we get the wheels are pretty fast, so those are running independently on another machine that we don't use for anything, so we can run a bunch of wheels. We'll probably run a whole bunch of wheels, that way we just have to make the bodies in future runs. So we are considering adapting after we make some of the standard ones, because we have so many people that want just the Speedster. We are thinking about adapting them to be like a pen rest or some type of pen accessory, but for the time being, it's just kind of like the original one was. It's just kind of like a desktop accessory, just something kind of cool. It's made out of metal, tchotchke or collectible or something that you can show off. Like, we never thought they would be that popular to begin with in that capacity, and a lot of people bought them at the time, and now we get good questions about making them frequently. So that standard version is definitely going to be the initial one that we do. We might make another one that is like a pen, is like a business card holder or something like that. So we do have a couple ideas to make them a little more utilitarian in terms of like actually functioning in some way. But for now, they're just kind of like one of those kind of cool things. And we do have plans to adapt them to different body styles. The initial releases are going to be just a smaller version of the standard one, which was kind of based off of a traditional like boxcar style little model. And so we will probably do a little bit of tweaking as time goes on, and add some detail here and there. And we do want to, I know Bill wants to make a version of his shop truck that kind of is put together the same way. So we're gonna play with that as time goes on. But for now, it's just going to be the standard size, a little bit smaller, just kind of a desktop toy. Okay, next item of business. If you read the email today, then you're already in the know. If you didn't, then we have TKO pry bars back in stock on the site. So if you're not familiar with what they are, when we started making pens out of titanium, we immediately had people ask us, hey, are you going to make any like accessories out of titanium? And basically the Swiss machines that we have like leave us with like a piece of metal that's like a piece of titanium that's this long. And so what we decided to do was we designed just a utilitarian, just like a titanium pry bar. A lot of the EDC manufacturers make those. We just didn't want to scrap that piece of titanium, and we weren't making anything that was smaller. We didn't have anything. The bolt knobs are made on the same machines, so they have a drop that's this size. We weren't hand feeding them on some of the other machines. We didn't set up for that or buy tooling for that. So we decided to turn those into little pry bars. They're pretty robust. You can use them for anything you'd use a pry bar for. I think they're a little bit more cool than they are in terms of like a piece of gear. It's a little bit more cool than utilitarian. I actually use the Delrin ones that we made more than anything. I've used this one. I don't even know. I've forgotten how many times I've used this one. That's why it happens to be here. Just because it's the Delrin one. You don't often find a decent non-metal pry bar that can actually do things and not like mess up stuff like a TV screen or paint. And if you're real careful with these Delrin ones, you can peel off a lot of stuff or pry pieces apart that won't break. Plastic fixtures. I've pulled apart plastic fixtures that were basically just snapped together, and frequently if you use a screwdriver or something like that, you'll end up snapping the heads off the fasteners or bending them out of place. And this one's actually this one I find is a little bit more utilitarian in terms of an actual pry tool. But we had so many questions about doing a titanium one that we went ahead and just did the drops of the bolt and the EDK batches and turned those into pry bars. And now that we have some drops off of the Retract run, we've turned those into pry bars as well. So those are on the website, just the standard tumbled ones. We will release when we get some anodized titanium pins. We'll have some anodized titanium pry bars too, probably same colors. I'm hoping that we get back to making these Delrin pry bars soon too. But that machine is one of the busiest. The machine that we make these on is one of the busiest machines that we have. So have to find some time to make these, but I do hope that we could have some of these made relatively quickly too. Okay, next order of business. I'm trying to read my list here. I wrote my handwriting is too small. Resin decagraphs. So we've kind of given updates. I feel like I've given updates every single month this year on how the non-metal decagraphs are coming. We're pretty close to being able to having the first couple special edition releases of the resin decagraphs. So we had to tweak the molding process for that we pour into, that Zoe uses, the molds. So to tweak that a little bit to kind of dial it in to get the right diameter. We were having some issues with the bodies, just not with the body pieces, because they're so thin. With those with the shrink rate on those being too much, so when we were machining them, like they were deforming and stuff, and so we went ahead and tweaked the molds that we make for those to make them a little bit oversized, so that if they do shrink down, there's still enough material there that we can machine them effectively. So we have that dialed in now, and Zoe's got like several different colors that she's working with. Some older colors we're going to redo, and then some new color ideas that her and I have worked on. So those should be right around the corner. Kind of an update with that. We had talked about potentially, I think in one of the live streams, I had talked about releasing some of those at the Chicago Pen Show. An update on that: we will not be attending the Chicago Pen Show, only because that show doesn't have any table availability. So we were on the wait list, and it's just not. We can't afford this late in the game. If they told us they hadn't, we were still on the wait list, and then it was like, well, now getting flights is going to be super expensive, too expensive for us to kind of go. So we will not be attending the Chicago Pen Show. So any models that we had that were supposed to be released, special editions at the Chicago Pen Show, we'll either move to the next pen show that we attend, or we'll release them on, depending on how big the run is, to the pen club or on the website as a, small batch or something. Excuse me. In terms of the next pen show we're going to go to, we are talking about adding the St. Louis Pen Show to the mix, because I don't think we were going to go to that one. But I think we're going to add that to the list. So you may see us at that one. I'll know for sure on the May live stream, because I think the St. Louis show is in June, so I kind of have to know. So if you care about the shows that we go to, that's kind of an update on the near future shows. Everything else is still potentially, we still are going to go to DC and San Francisco. We're going to try to add Dallas this year, Orlando, Colorado again. Bill is probably going to go back to the fall CCKS, which is a knife show in California. And I think that's all for right now that we have on the schedule. I don't have my list in front of me otherwise. It's right here. So DC, San Francisco, Orlando, Dallas, Colorado, the October CCKS in California. Bill will be there. So those are the ones that are still on the table, and like I said, potentially picking up the St. Louis show. The only reason I'm not 100% sure on that is because I think G was setting that up, because she's going to be the one. If anybody goes, she's going to be the one that goes to that show. So, all right, what's next? So if you've kind of seen recently, one of the main things that we've been putting up on the website have been the aluminum Vertexes. So like this one. Do we have any more here? These are the older ones. The green. We had the blue. The green and the blue were the first couple that we did after we did the special release ones tumbled. We released the red one, and then the black one went up this last week as well. I have one more done right now. We're just finalizing photos and stuff like that, and that is a silver anodized one, but it's machined a little bit differently. It has some detail rings on the curved portion of the body and the cap, which is why we kind of did it in silver, because we wanted you to, because they're very, very light concentric rings around just a little detail. I went ahead and did that one in silver, partly because when we polished this just off the machine, the standard one in silver, it looks good, but it's super, super plain. And so you're like, well, if we do a silver version, it's going to have to be the one that we added those detail rings to it, just to give it a little bit more pizzazz. Not that pen is plain. It's just, it kind of just blends in and looks very nondescript in anodized silver, or in just the clear anodized, where it's, just polished aluminum, and then it just looks like a silver pen. I don't, there are people that have specifically asked for it that are like, all I use are your silver pens. Please make sure that you do one of the Vertexes in silver. And so we knew we were going to do some, but we wanted it to be a little bit different, which is why we did the version with those detail rings. Look for that this week, and they're very limited. I think Josh just did 50 caps and bodies of that, maybe. So not going to be a lot of those available on the website. They do have silver grips, so you'll have your choice of any of the polycarbonate grip sections can go in there, or the red, black, or silver grip section can also be added in there. So we kind of standardize them like this so that you have the single color, but you can have a different color grip if you choose. I know a lot of people like the black with the red. This is the one that I'm carrying right now. I like the all red version with the brass tip in there. Looks kind of cool. Adds just a teeny bit of weight to the front. So that's kind of what we have. But also with that, we are going to be adding the aluminum grip section options to the site by themselves this coming week. I just need to get photos taken of those. So much like the polycarbonate grip sections have a page where you can just buy extra grip sections, you'll be able to buy any of the aluminum Vertex grip sections. Now, caveat with that, don't eyedropper that pen. Okay, let me rephrase. We don't recommend that you eyedropper a pen, one of the Vertex pens that has an aluminum grip section in it, for multiple reasons. The first of which is the aluminum grip sections do not have an internal O-ring, because the O-ring there is really designed for that eyedropper ability. So, and since we don't recommend, and most manufacturers will not recommend, that you eyedropper a metal pen, the ink will stain. Trust me, I've tried this with permanent ink and with non-permanent ink, with multiple different types of ink, where I put it in an anodized pen. The last time it was in the pen for 33 days. The pen worked fine the entire time, but the body of the pen internally and the grip of the pen were stained, like you couldn't, permanently stained, even with the non-permanent inks. Like, I used bleach, I used acetone, I left it like submerged in bleach for like 20 days, and it did not bleach that ink off of the aluminum. So, and this was not raw aluminum, it was anodized aluminum. So we don't recommend that you eyedropper your metal pens, even if they just have a metal grip section, due to staining. If you do, it can be done with some caveats. If you do eyedropper a metal pen, understand that not all inks are created equal. You may run into some corrosion of parts because inks have different pH balances. There is a website, there is a web page available that goes over some of the pH levels of different inks. Not all inks, but they tested certain inks. I believe it's Richard Bender's website has like a part of an article, or potentially a breakdown of an article, that kind of talks about pH levels of different inks, due to the fact that he implements it in terms of like why you shouldn't use certain inks, certain modern inks with vintage fountain pens, because there are different dyes that change the pH level that we use now that weren't used when the vintage pens were made. So that's kind of the way that he applies it. I apply it more towards our manufacturing. Ink pH levels will differ. Their viscosity will differ. Therefore, you're going to get that you're going to act differently in a metal pen than they would in a plastic pen. So with that in mind, if you do decide to eyedropper a pen that is metal, I will recommend that you use, even with our pens that have O-rings, that you use silicone grease on all the pieces that have threads, just as a double, kind of a double, I'm trying to think of the term I'm using, just as an extra safety measure so that you don't get any leakage and you have minimal staining. So it can be done, and if you do that, just use a lot of silicone grease. With metal pens, it's not nearly as, you don't have to be nearly as picky with the silicone grease that you use. I think we use the silicone grease that we use here. We use the Super Lube brand, which you can find at like Lowe's and Home Depot and Ace. It's a gray container with like a orange, yellow, and blue like lettering or something. There's all this talk about, oh, it's be 100% silicone, and then you'll find stuff that doesn't say, when it does have a breakdown, it doesn't say 100% silicone. But if you look at the MSDS, all the different things that are listed in terms of ingredients are all different formulations of silicone or a byproduct of silicone. So most of the silicones that you'll find can be used with basically all of our pens. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. Like, just kind of, I'm going to reiterate on the page, like, you know, if you use this, we recommend not using this eyedroppered for a fountain pen. If you do decide to use it eyedroppered, understand it can potentially stain, and that you're going to need to use an extra amount of silicone grease on all parts that have threads, body, for this pen specifically, the body and the grip. So there's kind of an update on that. I don't know the final pricing on those. Probably $20 for the grips by themselves, somewhere around there. I have to look at the sheet when I build those products, but I would imagine it's going to be right around the $20 mark. Similar to maybe a little bit more, maybe 25, since there's a little bit more material, there's a little bit more machining that goes into those than go into the ink grips, and I think those are $20 or so. All right, let me read through my list. I think that's everything. I know there's not a lot of people here right now. We're a little bit slow in here tonight. But that's kind of all that I have. I apologize for not having my secondary camera so I can show some stuff off to you. We'll make up for it next month, though. Definitely have some stuff to show to you next month. Like always, if you guys have questions, I'll go ahead and wait around for 5-10 minutes and field your questions. If not, we'll wrap things up and you guys can get back to your Friday, and I'll shut the shop down. But any questions from anybody in the chat? Wow, I'm watching like the replay, and like the delay is so long. Is the Render K being retired? No, the Render K is not being retired. In fact, the majority of the colors for the Render K are on the site right now. We were just out of stock for quite some time, so I believe we have all of the colors in stock except for orange that are available on the site. Oh, and we might not have, I'm trying to think, I think we were out of copper as well. But no, it's not being retired, not being discontinued. I have no plans to get rid of that pen. That's our original pen. I would imagine that pen will go away if the Keras brand ever like goes away. that'll be the one that we keep, even for posterity's sake, for time immemorial. It's the first pen we ever made. It's near and dear to Bill's heart, and so we don't plan on getting rid of that one. What did we make before pens? So, Michelle, we made a whole bunch of different things. Before pens, we were primarily a standard machine shop, so contract machining. So we did a lot of different things. We did automotive, we did aerospace, we did defense. Well, not really defense. We did defense-ish. Motorcycle. We still do motorcycle and automotive stuff. Bill's background in machining is largely automotive manufacturing. That's kind of how we got to start. So we did a bunch of stuff like that, and then we did did phone cases when the iPhone 4 was out. That was the first retail product that we machined and sold. Were just some aluminum, and I think we had some brass and titanium phone cases that we did. So we did that for the iPhone 4 and iPhone 5, and then we did it for the iPad. I don't remember what version of the iPad, maybe the 3. I don't remember which one it was. It was before my time, right before. But after the 5, with the iPhone 5, when they moved to the iPhone 6, they changed the standard size of the iPhone. And so we discontinued production of our iPhone cases based off of the fact that they were making so many different sizes, and the standard version that had kind of been standard sized and shaped was being changed dramatically enough that we couldn't adapt our current designs, and several of the parts that we were using were difficult to make, so we would have to redesign them from the ground up. So we moved away from iPhone manufacture from support of Apple products, basically. We made a little like sound projection box for the iPhone that you could like plug in, and it was made with a speaker, and it was made of aluminum, and it would project the sound, called the Projectone. What else did we make? But then after that, we kind of moved right into pens. So outside of the contract work, that was just kind of not a mishmash, but it was just kind of one of those things where Bill would do, if we had the machines to do it, and the job was something that we could squeeze in, or if we didn't have any work like going on, that we could do everything the manufacturer needed to be done. We were primarily a contract machining business. And we still do, contract machining with the economy the way that it is. We are currently probably doing 25 to 30% of the business right now is contract machining. Just to make, just to be able to, keep all the employees and keep our revenue where it needs to be, and keep the machines running. Many of the machines that we have are more suited to a business-to-business large format milling, and so the pens don't require those machines very often. So that's kind of what we've done in the past. Chris, any plans on possibly making Speedster out of brass or copper? I doubt we'd ever make one out of copper. Might make some out of brass. I know we made a few out of brass in the original run, but those were so much bigger. We might tinker around with making versions out of brass, and potentially scaling down another size to make some smaller ones out of brass and copper that would be more cost effective. So we would potentially do something like that. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But right now the focus is just on doing the aluminum ones. I know before we made some of the wheels out of brass and copper because that was a lot easier to do than making the bodies out of brass and copper. Timothy, I've been carrying an aluminum Vertex rollerball and have had trouble with the O-ring and the cap tearing. I've not had that issue with my resin Vertexes. Any thoughts why this may be? That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know for a couple of reasons. First off, this is, I don't know, the 5th or 6th Vertex rollerball in all aluminum that I've been using, and I haven't had any of them tear. It's possible that your grip section face has like a sharp spot on it. That's or there's something in the cap. That's the only thing that I can think. Even posting it, you're not going to get any kind of movement on the O-ring. It's just going to be on capping. So like I said, I would hazard a guess and say that there's something on the lip of the grip. It was either faced wrong and it doesn't have a chamfer, or it's got a burr or something somewhere that's catching. You should just email us, Timothy, and we can send you a grip section or an entire, replace the entire pen or something like that. I don't know. We might have to do something like that because it might be something that we just need to swap the parts out. Because I haven't actually seen that happen yet, at all in any of the ones that I've used, whether it was a polycarbonate grip in an aluminum cap or an aluminum grip in an aluminum cap. So I don't know. Why is bronze such a rare pen material? I think there's a couple of reasons, and these are mostly just going to be guesses. Bronze is not that different. All right, let me backtrack a little bit. The majority of people won't be able to tell the difference between brass and bronze. And bronze is more expensive than brass is. Bronze is close to the same price, or hovers around the same price as copper. And oftentimes the price of brass drops significantly low enough that it's really, really inexpensive. Brass is far easier from a machining standpoint in terms of like our machining. Brass is far easier to machine than copper in terms of loss. There's not a lot of loss in our brass machining process. We don't have a lot of product loss due to like the pens like coming out of the feeder, like the parts and like rubbing against one another or any of those things. Bronze and copper are so soft that if you're not careful, you can have a large loss, or you have to put a lot of handwork into copper and bronze to get those marred pieces, those scratched up pieces back to where they need to be. So like we used to have a system where the machines that made pens would run all night long or until they ran out of raw bar stock to machine, and it would collect them in there was a rotary device that was basically a hopper that just collected all the parts. Big tray that moved. It was on a timer, so every 45 seconds it would just move, rotate. Not 45 seconds, it was actually based off of the machine time. So whenever one part was finished, it would move an inch or something like that. So the parts when they came out didn't fall on one another. And as it moved around, the part slowly, very slowly, came towards the center and like clumped up. Now we use that for the copper pins predominantly because in the old system the copper pins would just come out and kind of like pile up on one another, and inevitably there would be a whole bunch of them that had like dings and scratches because they were like landing on one another and scratching one another, and there was chips on them and that they would rub, and so you'd have to put a lot of like handwork into them, or if they dropped from a far enough height because they got over full, they fell over the sides, they'd fall on the tips or fall on the threads and they would be messed up. So because there is that users, unless you know bronze, unless you're like somebody who's an EDC collector who collects all bronze stuff versus brass, because there's not a lot of understanding the differences between the two materials and they look so close, it's just vastly cheaper for people to make pens out of brass than it is to make them out of bronze. And so I think that's kind of the main reason why that you're doing that. It's like the same reason that so perfect example. It's the same reason why we don't do black PVD on our pens, or PVD at all for that matter, or any of those like DLC, a diamond, those coatings. The majority of people can't tell the difference between black DLC or PVD and black anodized. Like, it's just for lame, and black anodized is vastly cheaper than DLC for a pen. The process of getting it done for us, like when we've got it quoted, it's just we can get way more parts back. So it's and most people don't know the difference. So it would be doing bronze versus doing brass is more for like a specific subset of from an already, like, I don't want to say niche in a bad term, but a relatively small like hobby, or even if you don't consider pens to be a hobby, a very small community. The people that want brass or bronze is an even smaller subsection of those, and the people that know the difference between brass and bronze is, and you're lowering the size of your customer base exponentially when you get into those specific types of materials, and the cost is just considerably higher. Any plans for developing new fountain pen designs? Are you happy with your current range? It's not that we're happy with, like, no, we're let me rephrase that. We are definitely happy with what we have. And it's less to do with developing pen designs and more to do with like having the time to do that type of thing. We're all really, really like busy. There's 8 or 9 of us that work here now, as opposed to like a year ago there was 13, 14 of us. So the company has shrunk a little bit. People have moved on to other positions and we just haven't replaced them, largely due to the economy and not having a lot of work to do. But that's necessitated kind of everybody adding roles onto their current tasks. And so the prototyping and design process of designing pens, designing items, and doing that stuff is kind of like moved down on the ladder of importance in terms of what we're focusing on. So it's not like we don't want to design more pens. It's just that right now we're kind of at a pause. There's multiple pens. In fact, I think there's 3 pens that were in different phases of being designed like last year at this time. But we just haven't had a chance to prototype or finish the designing on those. And so they've just been put on pause for now. Now, none of those pens were fountain pens, but we have talked about, we've stenciled some stuff down for a fountain pen. It's just not even in the initial of what we would consider the initial phases of development. It's just kind of an idea. And so all that stuff has been put on hold for the foreseeable future. We don't have any more bronze pens right now. I have bronze parts, but I don't have complete pens, Chris. Sorry. When planning and designing a pen, what is the thought process, consideration, and physical process in bringing a pen to market? It's a good question. It's a kind of a little bit difficult to answer because it's at least in terms of us, it's different for each pen. So the design process that went behind the Render K, the planning and design phases that went behind the Render K were basically, we were looking at the retail market of what things were being machined and being sold to retailers in specifically on Kickstarter. And the Pen Type A Kickstarter went live, and at the time our designer was like, well, I could design something that actually like had, I don't want to downplay the Pen Type A or make it seem like it's a crappy pen. It's just a very minimalist design to the point where it could even be called simplistic and really it's a bar that they've taken a piece off and turned into a cap. Now maybe all pens are that way, but it's very rudimentary in terms of from a design perspective. And if that's what they were going for, then they nailed it and hit it out of the park. But from our designer at the time perspective, he was like, well, we could design something that actually like looked like a pen that was built and had a specific design language around it. And then from there, and that's basically was the idea behind the Render K was, we want to design a pen that looks like it could potentially have been made and manufactured in the 1940s or 1950s, that had elements that were kind of timeless, but harkened back to mid-century, the mid 20th century. And then the bolt was basically, the idea behind the bolt was basically, all these bolt action pens were a huge phenomenon. We were constantly getting asked, hey, are you guys going to do a bolt action pen? We wanted to do something different that wasn't just your standard side click bolt with a big knob that stuck off the side. And so we designed the knob on the top that you press down, the plunger device. That's basically, it's, some people are like, well, it's just a click pen with a J slot. Well, all click pens have some type of locking action. Many of them are a modified J slot or a race piece that captured something that moves down and actuates in a way that looks like a J or a V or something like that, because it goes down and it comes up and it catches, and then when you push it down again, it goes down and releases and then goes up into a full position to actuate the refill. So it's all, you're not going to design anything new in terms of how that works. So kind of every pen has been different in terms of designing. Like this pen, the Vertex was just like, I wanted something that was compact, had very few pieces, didn't have any external fasteners on it, that had a seamless transition, so that for me, I tend to grip pens really hot. Actually, I don't always do this. Sometimes I write down here, but I move my hand a lot, especially when I'm writing for long periods of time. So I wanted the ability to be able to grip wherever I could on this pen and not have uncomfortable like gripping on threads or anything like that. And so the idea behind this pen was basically like, I wanted to be able to get into it quickly, put it away quickly, be able to write for a long period of time, have it be a size that was comfortable wherever you gripped it, and minimize hand fatigue, and you could write for a really long period of time, and that looked like nothing else that we designed before, or really like, though it looks similar to other pens on the market, it has enough design elements that it stands out among a crowd. So there's a lot of different things that go into the design process of a pen, and they vary depending on what we're looking for. Like the EDK was just like, we had so many people that asked us for a smaller click pen that we designed a smaller click pen. It was just because people were like, I really like carrying a pen in my pocket. It's uncomfortable to carry the retract in my pocket. Is there any way you can make something that's like, even if it was just a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch shorter, it would be a lot more comfortable in certain pants that I wear. And it was just like, hey, we could make something that maximized the use of a ballpoint refill and shrunk the pen down, gave it a little bit more diameter than a retract had in terms of the gripping surface. And then that was kind of the idea behind that one. So a lot of it's just, it's kind of all over the place. It just depends on what we're looking at making. It's just, what is the goal for what we're doing at the time? Like, you know, if we manufacture or we design a new fountain pen, it's probably going to be based around a different filling system, or a different size, or a different function than the ones that we currently have, because now we have 4 different pens that are fountain pens, and they all kind of fill their own voids, or they fill their own area in terms of our catalog. So a new one would have to be something that was different in terms of the filling mechanism, or different in terms of how it functioned, or different in terms of, like, you know, we don't make anything that's this shape or this size or this weight, or, you know, it kind of has to fill some type of void that we're not currently addressing with our current catalog. Steve, will there be any more hammered titanium pens? Yeah, we started doing some, and then we had to stop doing them just temporarily, because we really needed to focus on getting the anodized titanium process dialed in. And so we did a few of the faceted titanium stuff. I think we only got like 3 off the machine, and those were basically pre-sold at pen shows. But we have a bunch set aside for that already, so we're definitely going to have those. Piston fill, I mean, it's definitely on the horizon, but we haven't realistically looked at it, mostly because whenever we ask about that, like when we do our surveys and ask about different filling mechanisms, piston filling is never as high as I think it's going to be. Like, the people that want it are not nearly as there's not nearly as many of them as I think there should be, because outside of our pens, I prefer to use a piston filler than any other type of pen. So I don't know why we haven't done why we have such a kind of a less interest in that than in other filling mechanisms. The cartridge converter is always the most popular version. It's like 75% of the people are like, we want a cartridge converter, and then like 12 to 15% want piston filling, and then there's like 2% that want eyedropper filling. So I don't know. Like, I would like a piston filler, but I don't know that it's realistic or going to happen anytime soon. And even if it did, it's been one of those things where from the jump, we've talked about adapting, basically designing that a piston filler to be one of like an ink, and like a slightly larger ink that has a piston mechanism in it, or something like that, or something that's a existing technology that we're just adapting to a piston filler. So I don't know. Realistically, the only thing that we don't have right now is a very small fountain pen, which the community for that is like like super, super, super tiny, or an oversized fountain pen. And again, that community is very, very tiny. Partner with Conid. I don't think Conid's in I don't think they're based off of the fact that they've patented all of their designs. I don't think that they're looking for partners at this point in time. Their design is super elegant. It's not really a piston filler. It's more a vacuum. It's an adapted vacuum system with a release valve in it and a locking mechanism. So it's an elegant design. It's really awesome. I think it's incredible, but there's a reason their pens are that expensive, because they are like many things that are designed and manufactured in Europe. One could call them over designed and like literally like over designed. Like they serve a purpose for a very small percentage of the community, and based off of their manufacturing capacity. I know they've started making pens again, but like even when they were manufacturing at full capacity, it was a relatively long process for people to get pens from them. Which, when each pen has something like 30 or 40 individual parts, I get it. Like there's a lot of pieces that have to be machined, and a lot, because their rods were machined. They didn't buy rods off the shelf. They made those. The majority of their parts were made in house, and then they were assembled and tested. So there's a lot of time into machining and to assembling every single one of those pens. So it justifies the cost for sure. All right, it's 4:00. We've had a long question and answer. I know I talked for a long time on a lot of different topics, but we had some pretty in-depth questions compared to what I normally get. Usually it's softballs that I can answer like real quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. If anybody has any last-minute questions that I can answer, we'll go ahead and do that. If not, I'll see you next month. Fingers crossed. We'll probably move back to 4:00 next month. This was just kind of one of those things where I got other stuff going on. I needed to wrap it up quickly. I needed to wrap it up early so I could get to the other stuff that I got to do today. But there's no further questions. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your questions. Hopefully I addressed everything that you guys wanted to know about. If you have any questions or you think of any questions, you can always comment below after the chat is closed. We do answer questions that are posted in the chat, or in the outside of the chat in the comment section, or you can email us or message us on any of our social media. You can like and subscribe if you want to. It doesn't give us anything. It's not monetizing us in any way. We don't monetize any of our content on YouTube. It does bring more eyes potentially to our channel. The more likes and comments that we get, but I get it. I only like and subscribe to a certain amount of things, but if you like and subscribe, you get notified every time we go live, every time we post a video, every time we post a short. So there's always that as well. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. Be safe. Timothy, reach out to us via email about your Vertex, and we'll see if we can take care of you. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Bye now.